Well, Brad Garlinghouse sure seems to be rather optimistic for the future of the cryptocurrency asset class, specifically in terms of price action. Here's a headline from the Daily Hodl. Ripple chief predicts big run for Bitcoin and crypto markets. Here's why. So indeed we are talking about actual price action for the asset class, and he gives his rationale for why he suspects things will go the way that he thinks they'll go. And also, we've got David Schwartz asking, what is his job at Ripple? Of course, David Schwartz being the co-creator of the XRP ledger itself. He wants to know what his job is. So I'll be sharing with you that tweet from him on the Twitters. That's a couple of things we'll be covering here. But before we go any further, if you would please delicately tap that like button. And if you're a fan of the bullish nature of such a piece here, right here, a Daily Hodl, Ripple CEO talking about a big run for the crypto asset class, go ahead and subscribe to the Moon Lambo channel. We could use a little bit of positivity in these cray-cray pandemic times. All right, let's go ahead and jump in now. Ripple CEO Brad Garlinghouse says the current state of the global economy is placing Bitcoin and the overall crypto markets in a prime position to rally. And I do like, by the way, the way he explained this and thought through it. It's rather sensical. Now, in a recent virtual meeting published on the YouTubes, Garlinghouse says he expects economic stimulus measures in the United States and abroad to have a negative impact on the U.S. dollar in the future. And here's a quote. This is awesome. I think the government stimulus now stands at about $3 trillion here in the United States alone. I expect it's going to continue, and I think that, while probably necessary to prevent an even more significant macroeconomic calamity, it definitely is going to have an impact on the future. Oh, Mr. Garlinghouse, I 100% agree with you there. This is not good. And he says something, the next part of the quote, he says something that I've been stating for like the last 2 months on and off. So here's the rest of his quote. It will, I believe, result in the debasement of fiat currencies. That's literally what I've said. I've used that word multiple times on this channel. We're debasing the United States dollars in doing what we're doing. Whether it was the right move or not, you can debate it till we're blue in the face. But absolutely, we're talking about debasement of the United States dollar. And then his quote continues here. And you are seeing that in some emerging markets already where the exchange rates have started to shift. But even here in the United States, it's a factor. Yes, even though the United States dollar is the global reserve currency quite effectively, it doesn't mean that you can't have at some point runaway inflation and all sorts of other bad things. I'm not saying that's going to happen anytime soon, by the way, or even as a result of this necessarily, but you can't do this in perpetuity and expect everything to remain fundamentally the same. Cause and effect is a real thing, my friends. Now, Garlinghouse points out the fact that Bitcoin was designed for a financial crisis, and so far, it's working well. He says the crypto movement has created digital alternatives to gold, and he believes the crypto markets as a whole will benefit from the global economic crisis just as gold itself did after the 2008 financial crisis. And by the way, I got another quote from him right here, and part of this I was unaware of, and I will tell you what it is. So here's the quote from Brad Garlinghouse. It's important to remember that Bitcoin was born in the wake of that global financial crisis in 2008 and 2009. Gold has been a safe haven asset in lots of ways. It did drop during the beginning of the 2008 liquidity crisis, but then you saw it make a big run, and I think we're going to see a similar trajectory and a similar opportunity around the crypto market overall. Fascinating. So the part that I did not know was that gold dropped at the beginning of the 2008 financial crisis, but then it had just a massive run, and I can't remember exactly what it jumped to per ounce. Maybe it was, I could maybe ballpark it. I'm gonna be a little bit off, but I don't know if it's like around 800 or 900 or something per ounce of gold, and it jumped up to, what did it jump to, like 1700 or 1900? It was somewhere there about. I know that's not right, but just to give you an idea, it maybe roughly doubled somewhere in that neighborhood. And then, of course, it did retrace and ultimately came back down. But I didn't know that it first went down before going on that massive rally that it went on after this the financial collapse a little over a decade ago. That was interesting to me because you did see stocks go down. You saw crypto go down on March 12th this year. That was was that they're calling Bloody Thursday? I think it was a Thursday. Whatever. That's anyway, although Garlinghouse has long said he's bullish on Bitcoin as a store of value, he argues XRP's speed and efficiency makes it a far better asset for payments. He says the San Francisco startup will continue to target the use of XRP in cross-border remittances amid a surge in demand for digital transactions. And here's the third and final quote from Brad Garlinghouse. We are going to continue to focus on how do we use XRP as a really effective tool for payments. We clearly are seeing the lockdown shelter-in-place dynamics have a big impact on cash-first remittance companies. So if you're unable to go to a physical store, then obviously you should expect that to go down. But we've also seen significant increases in digital-first players. Various public companies have shared decreases of 30 to 40% in their cash-centric businesses, but we've seen increases of 80% to 100% in those that are digital-first, and that obviously has been very good. Yeah, good for them, for sure. And hey, if you're on the cutting edge of technology, then you're much more likely to have experienced that and reaped the benefits. Things are changing, man. If we could just eliminate paper money and metallic currency, I would be one happy camper. Well, I mean, I wouldn't actually go camping because basically if you're camping, you're just basically pretending that you're homeless, which is not something I'm interested in doing. But if you want to go pretend you're homeless, like, have a rock and roll and good time out there, man. I'm not going to do it. Next. So here we go. A tweet from David Schwartz. And he tweeted this out. I don't know where this came from, if there's some sort of inside joke and I'm just unaware of this, but he tweeted this out. And it's a poll on the Twitters. And he asked, what is my job title at Ripple, with four possibilities. The first answer could be Chief Technology Officer with an M as in Matt in technology. It's technology, though. Next one is Chief Technology Officer. The next one is Chief Technical Officer. And the fourth one is Chief Choreographer. And obviously, the CTO is Chief Technology Officer, so I clicked that. And only 52% to this point have gotten that right after 6,384 votes. And you could Google what CTO means and look that up. It's Chief Technology Officer. But there you go. My fellow XRP YouTuber Jungle Link jumped in and wrote, the title is 5-Star Supreme Commander of All Allied Forces. I'll take it. Then you've got XRP community member All the Way 08, says his title is President of Moon Operations. And I do like that one right there. Scrolling down further, you have XRP, the Standard Productions, who, by the way, posted this. So I better mention this. And I think I actually covered this when he put this out. But I definitely remember the article. This is the guy that writes the Onion-style articles for the XRP community. And this one he titled, Hangry David Schwartz Pulls Fire Alarm to End Long Meeting with Central Bankers. And so he says that the title is Fire Chief. I thought it was pretty funny there anyway. Good stuff. All right, next, and I'll probably wrap up the video with this one here. Here's a tweet from Johnny, who tagged me. He wrote, saw this comment/question on Moon Lambo video and was wondering if anyone can help answer this. And I'm going to read through that in just a second here. And I did write to him. This was just yesterday, and I wrote, it's a great question. I've talked about this before, actually, at least a couple times on the channel, but happy to cover it again in a future video rather than type everything out on Twitter, which, now that I have this platform, is my preferred method. Before I had this platform, I used to type extensively on Twitter, and I hated the character limitation. It is so hard to communicate efficiently on Twitter, but we're still doing it. But then I wrote, thanks for tagging me with this, Johnny. And Johnny wrote, do you have the link to the video? Thanks. I better respond to that. No, I do not, because I am recording it right meow. Will link. Will link. Why can't I type afterwards? Then better add a little emoji here. How do you say we do? How about we do? I say we go for like a little smiley guy. Let's do a smiley guy. Come on, freaking load. There we go. I think my computer slows down when I'm doing the screen capture recording for videos. What are you going to do, though? So here we go. We got a little smiley and a thumbs up and reply. There we go. All right, thanks, Johnny. So what was the question here? Written in the YouTube comments. And it's a totally legitimate question. Reads as follows. This comes from somebody on YouTube named, the username is Plenty of Ripple. Someone please educate me on this. I am confused as to why/how remittance companies such as Western Union and MoneyGram will stay relevant. Question. Will there be some sort of virtual cross-border currency wall preventing people from sending money into different countries? If we have the ability to send money around the world ourselves, why use a bank or a remittance company? Well, before even answering further, I will say right now, no, there will not be some sort of virtual cross-border currency wall, unless there's some sort of weird geopolitical situation where there are sanctions in place, which would be a one-off instance. You've seen stuff like that within the legacy financial system, maybe, but beyond that, no. The answer is no. And then he writes, will they prevent us from sending money to individuals not citizens of the country the transfer is being sent from? That could force citizens to use remittance companies such as Western Union and MoneyGram to ensure they stay in business. What am I not seeing or understanding? Someone please help. Well, yes, indeed. Moon Lambo coming to the rescue, because not all heroes wear capes, but I am a hero. So I'm going to swoop in and answer this for you. If you're talking about a situation where citizens are forced to use remittance companies and they can't freely transact their cryptocurrency, well, first of all, cryptocurrencies are decentralized, so in theory, governments could come down and try and put the kibosh on all of this. It wouldn't work entirely. There would still be decentralized cryptocurrencies. But that would stifle innovation, and that's not the route that the world is going. It seems, by and large, I mean, you can find exceptions to this, but by and large, that's not the route the world is going. Governments the world over see that crypto is here to stay and see that there is, it can be transformative for the globe in very meaningful, positive ways. So no, I don't think that's going to happen. I think that verdict is already in. That's just my humble opinion. So why would people use these remittance companies when they could just transact cryptocurrency themselves? Well, they absolutely can, but there's a simple reason, and I brought this up. It's funny you mentioned this question because I feel like I was talking about this somewhat recently, within the last few weeks perhaps, and I was pointing out, and I can't remember why, but I brought up the point that you can do what Ripple's on-demand liquidity does in converting a fiat currency from one to another. Instead of having Ripple's efficient path-seeking algorithm do it for you automatically, you can just go ahead and convert your United States dollars, for example, into XRP on an exchange in the United States here. You can then go ahead and move that XRP to an exchange in Mexico, for example. You can do this all manually, and then the receiver can go ahead and take that XRP and convert it on the local rails into the Mexican peso. You can absolutely do that manually. So it's all like, well, you realize that? What do we need Ripple for? Well, you got to understand that there are tremendous hurdles to entering the world of crypto. There are so many reasons that people have no interest whatsoever for doing it. It is not a remotely user-friendly experience. It's absolutely awful, in fact. I mean, it's like trying to use email in the early 90s, but worse. I mean, I remember when I had, there was a walled garden called Prodigy. It was an internet service provider. And back when I started using it, all my friends, and this I remember I must have been like 7th grade or something. All my friends had AOL, but my dad wanted to have Prodigy. And I don't know what the rationale is on them. I don't know. But we had Prodigy. Everybody else had America Online. And back then, I could not email my friends on America Online. There was no interoperability with email between Prodigy and America Online, which sounds laughable today, right? But it was just a miserable experience, and it was even worse. If you go several years prior to that, it wasn't even it wasn't even worth doing, right? And so it's kind of similar in that sense that it's not fun to use it's hard to learn. And then you can think about how long the keys are and copying and pasting these weird long codes into stuff. You need to have a proper user interface if people are ever going to adopt it. And even then, a lot of people aren't going to be willing to take on the risk of the volatility. There are regulatory questions that can scare people off. There are a whole host of reasons, but chief among them certainly the lack of reasonable user interface. And so what's neat here is, because we see that the world over, the crypto asset class has been around for over a decade, right? And we've seen that even though there's been over 10 years, almost nobody on the planet is using crypto or holding crypto. Almost nobody. It's like, is it even 1% of the population? I don't know off the top of my head. Somebody should give me a figure. But whatever the figure is, the point is it's almost nobody. It's effectively zero. It might as well be. It's that little. And that goes to show people, and even if all of my reasons here that I'm citing are not all encompassing, and they're not, there's more to it than that. Those are some good ones, though. It's clear, you can clearly illustrate that there's a reason, there have to be reasons, because people are not just jumping into the crypto asset class like crazy. So to me, that's a fact regardless. So it's more like why. And so I gave some solid reasons, and there are others. I wasn't trying to have an exhaustive list here. And so why? So what's the path forward then? Well, if it's given that people are interested in owning cryptocurrencies, because frankly, the primary use case, as stated, is to replace fiat currency, and most people aren't experiencing friction there. There's another reason that people aren't doing it. The United States dollar today in 2020 and for the last decade, it's been working pretty well. Credit cards working pretty well. And it's not just the United States dollar, it's other fiat currencies, many of them the world over, working just fine. So what's the incentive to purchase a cryptocurrency to add more friction? And most of them, from a technological perspective, aren't even efficient enough to make that happen. Well, rather than going through all of that nonsense that I've just outlined here, instead, XRP, since some people, like perhaps you and I, maybe you're an XRP holder, maybe you're a trader and you're buying and selling XRP, you're adding to the liquidity on cryptocurrency exchanges the world over. And given that that's already happened because people like us are willing to come in and speculate, Ripple sees that. They say, well, why don't we just come in and take advantage of what people are already doing? We don't have to convince people to adopt it. They've already adopted it. There's enough people right there that you can just take advantage of that liquidity. And as a result of that existing pool of liquidity, conduct these transactions to convert from one fiat currency to another. So the end user doesn't have to adopt anything. All you have to do is have banks and remittance companies adopt Ripple's technology. It's all automated. And then the fact that people are already buying and selling, that's a huge part of why there's liquidity. And in addition to that, Ripple's helping to ensure that key exchange partners have the XRP that's needed to make corridors viable. But that's all. The cool thing about that is it runs in the background. It's all running in the background. And so retail users like you and I, we don't need to know what a cryptocurrency is. I mean, you and I do fine. But I'm just saying the typical people that are using remittance companies, they won't even know XRP is running in the background, yet they get all of these benefits. And so you could see a world in the future, perhaps, when the user interface is better, when volatility isn't an issue. Perhaps some fiat currencies collapse, and in some geographic regions it makes sense to adopt a cryptocurrency in place of that. But that's all perhaps going to be coming down the pike, even if it's decades from now. Whatever. I don't know how long it's going to take. And you could see a world transform to where the remittance companies, by and large, do get cut out or lose market share. That would be way down the road. And if that happens, guess what? XRP is still super duper fast, and you can still use it for the same use case, even if you want to do it manually, or if instead of doing it manually and converting it into fiat currency, if you want to actually use that as a currency, then if it's adopted to that degree, super duper fine too. Either way, it's a winning situation for XRP. So in the short term here, that's definitely what the landscape looks like. In the long term, we can just speculate about what the world might look like. But there's no way that people are, in any sort of meaningful way, in a large scale, are going to learn how to do all this stuff in terms of buying, holding, selling XRP to facilitate transactions. That would be an extreme minority. I'm sure some people are doing it. They could be using Bitcoin for that use case too. I'm sure some individuals can. If you search the world over, you could probably find somebody. But it's not something that's ever going to happen at scale. It needs to be automated. That's why what Ripple is doing is absolutely awesome. So I hope that answers your question. But that's it for this video. I am not a financial advisor. Do not buy or sell anything, because of anything I say or write, that would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the moon, Lambo!